All right, we're back talking about sleeper prospects, small school prospects, and now we are going to talk about quarterbacks that fit that mold. We all know about the quarterbacks at the top of the draft, but maybe there's the next Brock Purdy. Maybe there's a Mr. Irrelevant in here who was at the bottom of the draft. Isn't it fun that I feel like for the past 20 years, it was always who's going to be the next Tom Brady? And there was no new name, and we always talked about the same late round pick. And now we have Purdy to mention. All right, Emery, I'll start with you. Who is a small school or sleeper QB prospect you have?
Kade Peterson, Grand Valley State. I've been a big fan of his for 2 years now. I was the MC on the GLIAC Media Day. This was in Detroit on the campus of Wayne State. So I met him in person. Definitely off the bus look. Kind of is in that Josh McCown mode where he looks the part physically. Then you go watch him play, and he plays with that same defensive mentality as a quarterback, which is awesome. So he's athletic. He can run. He's also someone that's gonna never say die. Sometimes to his detriment, you gotta let a dead play die. But he can make all the throws. Has a terrific touch on his deep ball, but it's the athleticism where he's going to be able to extend plays, scramble while keeping his eyes downfield. And if push comes to shove, he's going to lower his shoulder and try to run through you for extra yards. So I'm a big fan of what he's done. I mean, you think about we talk about Army, Navy, we talk about Harvard, Yale, we talk about Alabama, Auburn. No one talks about the anchor bone classic between Grand Valley and Ferris State. That is a fantastic rivalry. And a lot of times usually decides who's going to go further in the playoffs. Well, this year they beat Ferris State twice. So that speaks volumes of them overcoming that boogeyman of Ferris State who won back-to-back Division II national championships. And so to lead his team through that and come out on the other side, I think this is an underrated prospect. Had a really good College Gridiron showcase as well.
Yeah, and you know what? Grand Valley can produce NFL players. We saw Matthew Judon come out of there a few years ago. Heck, Brian Kelly was the head coach there, 15, 20 years ago. So they're a legit program, and there's no reason someone from Grand Valley cannot thrive in the NFL. All right, Josh, who's your small school quarterback to watch out for?
Yeah, and just to add on that, Ferris State has a defensive back, Sean Stevens, that is going to be appealing for NFL teams as well. My small school quarterback is Sanford's Michael Hires, a player that did not get invited to the combine, but I think has a lot of qualities that you look for at the next level. We're not talking about top 100 guys here, so we're talking about guys that are going to be drafted later in the process, on Saturday. So how are they going to make a roster? Because when you look at what we saw last year, so many of these backup quarterbacks saw action. You've got to be able to contribute immediately. So what I want to look for when I'm looking for a player that is ready to compete right away, I'm looking for somebody that's comfortable in the pocket. They have a good sense of pressure. They can maneuver in the pocket. They throw with touch, good facilitator, and maybe doesn't have the arm strength that some of these top options have. But to me, that's Hires all day. He's somebody that can work within the pocket. If he feels pressure off his side, he's going to step up. If he feels it from in front of him, he's going to step to his side. So somebody that has a really good sense of pressure and he knows how to avoid it. When he does get into space, I think he has good enough accuracy to make those throws when the field is cut in half. Not necessarily a dual threat quarterback, but somebody that has enough foot quickness where he can get some yardage for you if the play breaks down. So to me, Hires is somebody that I think has a lot of value for teams as they're looking to fill out a roster.
Yeah, and look, he's a year 2022 Southern Conference Player of the Year, so he's had some huge seasons down there at Samford. Where do you think would be a good fit for him?
I think looking at San Francisco, getting somebody else in that system that isn't going to be asked to start right away. You've got Brock Purdy already, so develop a guy that is going to be able to learn at his own pace in an offense that takes a little bit of that stress off your shoulders. I think that's a situation where San Francisco could find some value in adding a quality depth player without sinking that type of financial capital into the position.
All right, Emery, you got another sleeper quarterback. Who is it?
You know how growing up where, you ask your parents for like McDonald's and they say we got McDonald's at home and they make you this burger, right? if you're asking for Jayden Daniels and they say we got Jayden Daniels at home, it's Darren Granger of Georgia State, who is built the same way, very lean, very athletic, has a whip of a release, does a good job in keeping plays alive with his mobility, and also can buy time to find someone deep down the field, can also take off and run for 50 plus yards if he wants to. And he was so good at Furman that I thought he would just stay there and really would have, been a draft pick coming out of Furman, but he transfers up to the Sun Best Conference and then goes to Georgia State and plays really well there. And the good part is he's been consistent over time. I thought he came out in the draft last year, didn't know he had an extra year. He went back and performed really well. So this is someone that's very Jayden Daniels like, coming out of one of the best conferences in college football.
And where would you like to see him end up?
Well, this is before they made the move to go and get, two excellent quarterbacks to help fill out their roster and compete for a starting job. But Pittsburgh would have been perfect, because of what they're looking like. As you see what the moves they've made, the moves that they're trying to make, and what they've had bubbling behind the surface a little bit. We saw them with Josh Dobbs. We saw them honestly with two-time Super Bowl champion from South Dakota State. I forgot I can't remember his name now, but he's with the Kansas City Chiefs as the third string quarterback, but he was drafted by Pittsburgh. I thought I had a higher grade on him than Kenny Pickett. So I thought Pittsburgh was on the right track. And then they went and let him go. He signs with Kansas City for the last 2 seasons. His name slips my mind. I'll figure it out as watch when we get off air. But this would be the perfect spot. Pittsburgh would be the perfect spot. Seattle as a backup could be a third QB3 would be the perfect spot, in my opinion, because again, he has the athleticism, has the ability to work deep down the field, and shown in games against P5 competition, against South Carolina, against Auburn, that he's got the goods to play high level football.
That is, what do you think if you're a GM? Would you said he's kind of Jayden Daniels light. Would you take Jayden Daniels in the first round and then turn around and take Granger with like a 6th round pick or 7th round pick to kind of, so you have guys with the same skill set at your QB1, QB2?
That's the smart thing to do, because that way you don't change much what you want to do offensively. Just how you may see people do that with receiver, you kind of have to do that with quarterback, because we've seen what in the last 3 years, since COVID. So we've seen you're going to play your backup at some point in time in this season. I don't know what has happened, but we have seen the influx of the backup quarterback over the last 4 years. So yes, you want to make sure your QB2 and your emergency game day guy you trust, because we've seen what that looks like. For teams going out there with a backup quarterback that has no idea what to do and is showing you that he can't play. You better make sure you're ready to go. If worst case happens, that you got to use your guy on the field during the game.
All right, Josh, you have one more sleeper quarterback. Who is it?
First of all, we only had so many topics that we could discuss, so it's kind of tough to fit all these guys into the conversation. But Furman's got an offensive lineman, Jacob Johanning, who's got some positional versatility as well. May not get drafted, but I think he will get some camp looks. My final quarterback to note, in the spirit of where this all began, which was Brock Purdy, having played extensively at the collegiate level with Iowa State, I'm gonna go with Kedon Slovis. He began his career with USC, crisscrossed the country, ended up at BYU. Again, I'm looking at similar qualities to what I discussed with Michael Hires. Somebody that's comfortable within the pocket. He can throw a touch. He can maneuver when he's pressured. Everything that's going to give you a fighting chance when the play breaks down. I think Kedon Slovis has played enough college football where, again, he's not giving you that high level, potential at the quarterback position. But as you're looking to fill out a depth chart, a roster, a team like New Orleans behind Derek Carr, and maybe that's a potential fit there. He's able to go in there, sit and learn behind Derek Carr in that offense. And maybe that's a scenario where he can develop into something more for them down the road.